October 23rd, 2002, Moscow. The Dubrovka Theater was packed. Over 1,000 people sat mesmerized as Nordost, a popular Russian musical, unfolded on stage. It was supposed to be an ordinary night. Entertainment, laughter, a temporary escape from the chaos of the outside world. Then, at precisely 9 p.m., everything changed. A deafening burst of gunfire shattered the illusion. Over 40 heavily armed Chechen insurgents stormed the stage, firing into the ceiling. Screams filled the air as masked attackers seized control, wiring the exits with explosives. Their message was chillingly simple. Russia must withdraw from Chechnya, or everyone dies. For the next 3 days, Moscow stood frozen in the grip of terror. Negotiations dragged on, but behind the scenes, the Kremlin had already made up its mind. They were sending in Spetsnaz. To understand why this happened, we need to go back to the war that made it inevitable. The collapse of the Soviet Union left Russia in chaos, economic ruin, organized crime, corruption at every level. But one of the greatest challenges Moscow faced was Chechnya, a breakaway republic that refused to be ruled. The Second Chechen War had been raging for years. Russian forces battled a brutal insurgency, leveling cities, while Chechen rebels responded with ruthless guerrilla warfare. At the center of this storm stood Shamil Basayev, a warlord hell-bent on revenge. He had lost his family in a Russian airstrike, and now he was bringing the war deep into Russia's heartland. Moscow had always been his ultimate target, but he wouldn't strike it himself. Instead, he entrusted the mission to Movsar Barayev, a rising insurgent commander with a deadly reputation. At just 23 years old, Barayev was already infamous. A kidnapper, a terrorist, a killer. He had trained his fighters, the so-called Suicide Squad of the 29th Division, for one final mission. A mission they never intended to return from. For weeks, Barayev's fighters hid in Moscow, waiting, watching, planning. Then, on October 23rd, they struck. Dressed in black combat gear, armed with AK-47s, grenades, and suicide vests, they stormed the Dubrovka Theater mid-performance. Gunfire, panic, screaming. Some audience members managed to escape in the confusion, but most were trapped. The insurgents wasted no time, rigging the exits with explosives and turning the theater into a ticking time bomb. Barayev took center stage, speaking directly to the hostages. "We are here to die, and we will take you with us unless Russia ends the war in Chechnya." As news of the attack spread, Russian special forces swarmed the area. Spetsnaz, Federal Security Service, FSB operatives, riot police. They surrounded the theater, cutting off every escape route. But the insurgents were ready. They released a videotape featuring Barayev himself. "We are more keen on dying than they are on living." A chilling declaration of intent. By midnight, Russian officials were at the negotiation table. They made an offer, safe passage out of Russia in exchange for the hostages. Barayev refused. Instead, he forced captives to plead for their lives on live television, begging the Kremlin to end the war. But the Kremlin wouldn't bend. At 1:30 a.m., the crisis escalated further. A desperate civilian, hoping to negotiate directly with the attackers, rushed toward the theater. She was gunned down on sight. The message was clear. There would be no mercy. Inside the theater, conditions deteriorated. Hostages collapsed from exhaustion, dehydration, and fear. Any attempt at resistance was met with brutal force. By the morning of October 26th, the Russian government had had enough. There would be no more talking. The assault was imminent. 5 a.m. Russian special forces began their high-risk gamble. Their plan: pump a powerful knockout gas into the ventilation system, incapacitate everyone inside, then storm the building before the insurgents could detonate their bombs. Simple in theory, catastrophic in execution. The gas was untested, unpredictable, and deadly. As it filled the theater, chaos erupted. Some insurgents, wearing gas masks, realized what was happening and opened fire on police outside. For an hour and a half, Spetsnaz waited for the gas to take effect. Then, at 6:30 a.m., they struck. Explosives blasted open the doors. Gunfire tore through the smoke-filled air. Most of the insurgents were unconscious, but the ones still standing were cut down instantly. No arrests, no survivors. By 7 a.m., it was over. Every single terrorist was dead. The hostages were safe, or so it seemed. Then came the horrifying truth. 130 hostages had died, not from bullets, not from bombs, but from the gas itself. Many suffocated where they sat. Others died in hospitals because Russian emergency responders had no idea what chemical had been used, delaying critical treatment. Moscow celebrated a victory, but it was a hollow one. The Kremlin refused to admit fault. They denied the gas was to blame. They even denied that children were among the dead. But independent investigations uncovered the truth. The gas was a fentanyl-based nerve agent, so potent that it killed more hostages than terrorists. Russia had sacrificed its own people to ensure the mission's success. A textbook Spetsnaz operation, brutal, effective, and utterly devoid of compromise.